G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Aaron Chapman from Security National Mortgage Company based in Mesa, USA. Thanks for your time today, Aaron.
How you doing, Troy?
Doing well, apart from this cold. But let's start with how we know each other. So Brianna on your team reached out, thought you'd be a great guest for us.
She has been doing a phenomenal job of going out there and finding good messages out there that she believes that we had made up with. And I checked out your operations and, I think I would definitely want to participate in a show with Troy.
Oh, thank you. And you're a seasoned podcast guest. You're saying before you record, been on over 300 casts now. That's great.
We have experienced a lot of great shows and a lot of great audiences out there. And anytime I can continue to expand that opportunity, I'm going to take it.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So I am one who helps finance the real estate investor buying investments in the United States. So usually your single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, smaller apartment complexes. So it makes mine a little bit different than the average person doing what I do is I focus on helping people really understand the value of leverage over, say, paying cash for an asset and then allowing their revenue or their investment to grow over time with small cash flow. Cash flow is very small when you're talking about large chunks of money going into something versus levering it with a small percentage of the total and then allowing your tenants or the people you rent to pay off the leverage and give you cash flow that continues to compound with inflation. So it's a very, very education heavy process, a very technical process, and a very, I would say, a conversation heavy process. I get to communicate to a lot of people, and that's what I enjoy about it.
And so you focus on investors, not home owners per se?
I focus on the investors, but the homeowners come as well. I started in the industry on the homeowner side of it, mostly on the refinances when the interest rates were coming down in the late 90s. I got in the late 1997. And then I started to transition to the investor because it was a less emotional conversation. I'm not one who loves to get into the emotions of why somebody wants to purchase something, because I believe when you start messing with somebody's emotions to influence them to do something, you can influence them incorrectly to do something that is not in their best interest. I'm a numbers guy. I became a numbers guy, not always was, but I became a numbers guy while I was doing this industry when I understood the real estate investor and why they would purchase something because of how those numbers work. And once I got to understand that, it became an easier conversation because it either works or it doesn't. It's not about the emotion. Now, there's still going to be some emotion, right? People want to know, they want to feel comfortable they got a great deal, that it worked out in their best interest. They want to go to a party on the weekend, pound their chest and say, I own 10 investment properties. What do you have, right? There's always going to be a feeling that drives us all. We're all motivated by that. But there is definitely underlying data that needs to compel people more so than just tickling that emotion.
And how did you start out?
It's probably the most interesting story. I spent my high school years cattle ranching. And from there, I was able to leave halfway through my senior year to Wyoming to work in the oil fields. That was not intentional. I happened to stumble into that. My getting through high school was not because I was good at studies and I was not good at any sort of specific subject. I learned how to pick a lock. By doing that, I found where they kept the tests, and I was able to create a way of being able to have a business and get myself through school with a C average, which I engineered to get out of there so nobody raised any eyebrows. Once I got out, got into the world and started to understand how business worked from the perspective of people who thought up things and people who did things. And eventually I went from there to work in running heavy equipment and driving truck. And then I found myself in northern New Mexico in the mines in the late 90s. When they shut down that mine because the cost to produce was more so than what they were producing, I had to come back to Arizona where I had a wife and an infant son. And I was trying to get another job. And I found myself being told that I was overqualified for everything I applied for. And it got to the point where it became dire at that point. I was overdrawn on my account. We were running out of, but money was gone completely, and we were out of diapers. for my infant son, and I had no way to pay for him. Well, I went to another job interview for a $10 an hour truck driving job and was turned down again for being overqualified. As I left that location, my gas light came on in my truck, alerting me that I was low on fuel. I'd never driven with a gas light on in this vehicle, so I didn't know how far I could go. As I'm heading to the grocery store, I found a gas station on the corner outside that same grocery store I was heading to. I pulled up to a pump. I had a debit card with me. That was the only form of payment I had at the time. I said a quick little prayer. I swiped it, and I got a decline because of my overdrawn account. So I rifled through my truck looking for some loose change. I found some coins. I locked the doors, and then I went walking. I walked that parking lot for seemingly a couple of hours to find enough change to get 2 gallons of gas. Now, back then, it was 89 US cents a gallon. And people still carried change in 1997. So it was easy, not easy, but I could collect it. You can't really do that today to get a couple gallons of gas. I exchanged my time in the form of change for some gas. I went in, found those diapers that corresponded with this store coupon. And as I'm walking out of there with my head down, trying not to make eye contact, I heard my name called. Somebody recognized me. And when he recognized me, we connected up. I very briefly just tried to not share what my life was like at that time because it was embarrassing. He invited me to dinner. He took me and my wife to dinner with a gift certificate, and that is where he shared with me that he had went from the industry we were in before to the lending industry of doing mortgages for people, and that was my introduction. He made a connection for me. I shaved, cut a foot off of my hair. I started as a telemarketer in December of 1997. That's how I was introduced to this industry. I had zero background that would have led me to this. But because of I had no other options, I decided to explore this. So come fast forward years later. Here I am, 2024. Last year, 2022, I was ranked number 7 in the United States in the industry that I was in. And at that time, there's 300,000 people that did my job. The ranking came out this year for the previous year. I dropped to number 41. It was a really tough year, but I'm still in the top 50 of all these people who do my business because of just a lot of hard damn work over the last couple of decades.
Oh, that's a phenomenal journey, Aaron. Congratulations, and particularly on the rankings as well. What year did you start Security National, and how old were you?
So I started Security National. Actually, was started by another group. I was actually brought in 2015. I am a shareholder and I run a team within the corporate company. I have been asked many times why I don't just start my own company and just be completely separate. Here's the problem of doing that in the lending industry. There's a lot of legal stuff you got to deal with, a lot of government compliance, and a lot of HR. That is an enormous lift and enormous expense to do when you're talking about a small scale. Now, when you're partnered in with a large organization like this that already has it built, it's very, very cheap for me per transaction versus what it'd be for me to do that separately. So, as a shareholder and one who I spoke, was one at the board meeting in Vienna, Austria, actually about 3 weeks ago, speaking to the board about our current structure on the piece that I oversee. It's a business that I enjoy being part of. It's a business I want to continue to see flourishing, and they were always trying to be ahead of the curve.
And how old were you 9 years ago when you bought in?
Let me see here. I was just turning 40 years old.
Yep. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
So the industry, go through the business. I'll take it all the way back when I started that broker shop all the way up till now. Getting into it, you have to get an understanding of humans in reality. It's not a matter of the business aspect itself. The numbers and the other things will come, and understanding the nuances of banking, the nuances of lending. But where it really boils down to is understanding humans and how they think to the best of your ability, and then trying to identify with them. The more I developed an understanding of the people I was working with, a more I got an opportunity to really think what motivates another person and to create relationships with them, the more I started to see my business grow. It was more about the relationship with the other person on the other end of the phone or sitting on the other side of my desk than about the deal itself. And sometimes that relationship, in making that the most valuable thing, you end up not getting the deal. The other thing I learned about in the business aspect of it to build it and to continue to grow and have the success is learn where you have those limits and stick within those limits. And sometimes you have to expand yourself. Sometimes you don't even know where your limit is. You got to expand yourself till you decide where your limit really is. And one example early in 1990 in my career, 1998. When you're trying to build a business like this, you will take anything you can get. An individual decided that he and his son were living together, and he's an older gentleman with a son in his 30s, I think. And they needed to meet with me on Christmas morning to talk about a refinance on their home. Well, I had little children, two kids at the time, and they wanted me to meet with them Christmas morning. Well, I agreed to this. I went into my office, I opened up, the only person there, we met in the conference room Christmas morning to talk about their deal. I had this deal moving forward. Well, at that time, as you're still starting out, right, as my first year in business, sometimes you only do one deal a month. That was my sole closing in January. That was my start of that year, 1999, that sole closing I was going to have. When I sent the paperwork to closing for the title company to close this, they were supposed to sign, close, and I was going to get paid on it. I got word back that they didn't sign it. They signed somebody else's papers. So I called this man up and said, "Explain to me what happened, man. You didn't tell me anything about this. What do you mean you signed somebody else?" He goes, "Well, I was going to take the best deal at the closing table. So you never told me about that. I met with you on Christmas because that was your choice. And that is a choice of business." And he hung up on me. And literally the only difference between me and the other guy was like $100 and some difference in total. But this guy took that over mine, even though I met on Christmas Day. So I got to realize that when you're willing to compromise yourself and what you want and what you should be doing, to that extent, people will compromise you. The second you set boundaries and you establish those boundaries, you know what those boundaries are, people know that they cannot compromise you. Another thing that I also learned with folks when it comes to that, there are certain, and I want to word this right, there are certain cultures that enjoy negotiating. That's just how they're built. From the time that they were children all the way up to an adult, negotiating was always part of it. And they will keep going if they have the slightest inkling that there's more to get. So you need to make sure that when you set your price, you set what it needs to happen, you set your revenue needs, that you stand by that. It doesn't matter. If you lose a deal, you lose a deal, but you stand by that all the time. But the second you say, "Well, let me check," or "I'm not sure," some of that effect, they know that you haven't said it, that there is more in there, and they're going to wrench it from you. Establish what it is, make it fair, and stand by it. The second I started doing that, is another time things started to grow for me.
And how many full-time equivalent team members did you start with, and where are you at now?
Full-time team members was me, just me shaking my ass like I was late on rent to try and get business in the door. In fact, for my first year, I was working 2 jobs. I'd sleep 4 hours a night. I'd get up, I'd run heavy equipment. It started out, I was actually driving truck. Finally got one. I drive truck to Sacramento and back from Phoenix to Sacramento, 14 hours one way, go in the office 3 days a week. That didn't work. Then I went back to running heavy equipment, 3 a.m. till noon, then from 2 p.m. on till 10 p.m. every single day. That was just me doing that. And I continued to do just me until I was able to get an assistant to work with me in, I believe that was about 2004, 2005. Then I built a little team of 3. We were doing pretty well. Then the crash happened of 2008. That crash of 2008 reset everything. Not only did I have to go through the financial devastation of 2008, it was August 8th of 2008. I got into a motorcycle accident at over 80 miles an hour that shattered both my legs, took out my right arm and side. I only had one good arm, my left side, and I'm right-handed. And I had taken such an impact, even with a helmet on, that my memory got erased to the point that it would recycle every 3 minutes. It would start over. And I feel like I'm in a new place every 3 minutes. So I had to come back from that. So when I came out of the hospital, I had to retrain my memory. I had to learn how to walk again. And my business was completely obliterated. And every asset I had was gone. By the grace of God and my inability to walk and a $7 million medical bill, did I get to keep my house and my cars. That's what kept me from going completely bankrupt, because when I had the creditors after me, I shipped them a fax of my first medical bill of $1.7 million and they backed off. That's what helped me there. So pain actually helped me significantly. I felt luckier than the average person going through that, who had zero excuses with creditors. They were just being crushed financially. I at least had that. Coming back from that, I was able to get in with the real estate investor coming into Arizona. I added one team member, and then slowly over time, I had another team member after another team member. And in 2015, I came to Security National with a partnership. It was less than a year, and my business partner decided in the background, without me looking, to take everything and obliterate me all over again. But I still had 2 team members. We started over. decide how are we going to do this when the phone rings. We built out a system. We got really, really good with that system construction. Then from there, we started building, and I went from those 2 team members to 5. And it wasn't long. I had over 30 team members at the peak of 2021. And we were really, really, really cranking. Then the Federal Reserve started doing what they call quantitative tightening, and things changed in our market. And as a result of that change in our market, we went from 30 plus team members down to 21 team members, and we're still moving along, even in a very tough environment.
I've got to say, Aaron, holy shit, I won't need to fill out my great journal on gratitude this morning. That's quite a journey. Wow, you've been through a whole lot.
And the thing about it, life's not done, man. When I go to the grave, I'm coming in hot. I still have a lot of stuff to do, and I just pray that I've learned enough from the ass beatings that I've taken that I don't have to take more like that. Now, I tell my team all the time, like, guys, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Make new ones. I pray that that's the world that I live in too. I actually have a book coming out in August all about taking an ass beating. You cannot be successful unless you're getting your ass kicked. You're going to get your ass kicked whether you're successful or unsuccessful. It's your decision. Do you want to just lay there and get your shit kicked at you because people keep walking on you, or do you want to get up and be slugging it out, swinging and getting ahead slowly, but you're still getting ahead?
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
That's the toughest question. That's one I've had to look at many times and consider many times. And I would say it's probably about 2 to 3 weeks ago is when I really felt that. And let me explain why. Back when I was a kid in New Mexico, my dad worked in the mines. He was a miner. I got to hear about his job underground. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world to go underground, which I still think it was. I loved that job. He had a 1959 Chevy truck he bought from his dad. And he absolutely loved that truck, but it got in a wreck and he wasn't able to drive it. And he planned on fixing it up. But the mines in New Mexico shut down. They're all the uranium mines. They were sending money sending uranium for government contracts. Well, we had to move on to Wyoming to the coal mines. And he needed to sell that truck for the money to move because we couldn't transport that truck and he needed money for it. Well, later on in life, I heard him talking about that. It was only a few years later. I was 9 or 10 years old when we were talking about it. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm going to replace that truck for him someday. Now, I've had multiple opportunities where I've been able to get my hands on a truck that was like it, but it was just trying to get it fixed up and dealing with people and whatever. And I have one right now sitting in a body shop for 8 years, and this guy has yet to actually get a whole lot done on it. And out of frustration, it wasn't even out of frustration, I stumbled onto an opportunity to actually pick up almost the exact same truck he used to have, but completely fixed up. I saw it online. When I ran the quick little back of the napkin math, it was a lot less to buy that truck than it was to finish the one I already have. So I made arrangements. It was delivered. I picked it up, and me and my brothers got to take that down to my dad just a couple of weeks ago. And for me to be able to say that I was able to accomplish what I set 40 years ago as a goal, that to me was success. That's when I felt the most successful. The only other time I felt as successful, now I've made millions of dollars. I've done very well. I've had great deals happen. But the only other time that I felt very, very successful, I was underground working in the mines with my pop. He was the one training me down there, and I was 23 years old. And he always, when I was growing up, talked about his partner and his opposites. His partners, you always worked underground with another person's, safety reasons, and you can get stuff done. His opposites were people on opposite shifts, and he either liked you or he hated you. There was no middle ground with this guy, and we referred to as your partner. That was a person that he had his respect. And he had referred to his opposites as people I respect. And he would call you a no-minded son bitch if he didn't like you and he thought you were worthless. Well, there was a time that he trained me to a point in a short window of time to where I could run what they called my own heading, driving my own tunnel. And I saw the lights. We had certain lights, signals we'd give each other with our lights. And I got the signal to shut down, even though I was drilling away from him. I saw the shutdown signal. I shut off. I turned around. And he was talking to the general mine superintendent. And that guy was the guy in charge of the entire mine. And he was walking through inspecting things. And he had started asking questions. And my pop said at that time, and I heard him say, my partner and I, not my son, my partner. That at that time that was the most successful I'd ever been in my life because I'd achieved a level that I had held in such high regard. The next time that my success is achieving the goal that I set with my mother 40 years ago to deliver that to my dad. I got to share that. They're no longer together. We got to share that moment with my mom on the phone. And she shed tears with me about being able to accomplish something that has been set in motion for so many years. And that's what I want to at least convey to everybody. It doesn't matter how long it takes for you to accomplish a goal. Keep working towards it. Keep it at the forefront of your mind, always being there. And eventually, someday, the opportunity will make itself available to you to accomplish what you set forth to do. Now, I've accomplished a lot of other goals. There's a lot of things I've written and done and have made things happen. I got, real estate across the country. I've done so many achieved so many things in business. I've been awarded so many things. You don't see a single award behind me, do you?
No.
There's not a single award in my possession. I have a picture of my dad mining because that's where I learned so many things from him. And I have a picture here signed by a bunch of people because when I spoke to this event, and a bunch of people that were there signed that to me. I got my helmet that I wore when I was mining. My dad wore that, and some other things. I've got right here my belt when I used to rescue people. I worked for the sheriff's office as I was doing this as in charge of their technical rescue unit, pulling people off cliffs and out of caves and coming in helicopters. Those are the things to me that I take as trophies of my experience, not somebody giving me an award for doing something that anybody really could do as far as numbers in business.
What does success look like to you?
It looks like being able to wake up every day and decide for myself what I intend to do that day. Being able to fulfill the daily routine that I've set for myself. Wake up at 4:30, read my books, do some writing, get a workout in, get prepared, check out the market, send a message to my team and get started every single day. Success is being able to start the way you intend it to start. Success is not done when you do what everybody else tells you to do and you're at somebody else's beck and call. Now, we're all going to be at somebody else's beck and call at some point, even as a business owner. If you have customers, they are your boss. But when you can decide what you intend to do and you can decide what type of business you want to do and who you want to do that with, that to me is when you have found success. That and being able to buy your dad's 1959 Chevy truck.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Being ridiculously authentic in the sense of, now what I mean by that is not compromising yourself at all. When I came into the industry, I had to cut a foot off of my hair and I had to shave. And I walked in from the dirt of the mines to an office structure. And when you think about lending money to people in the banking industry, there is a certain uniform that you anticipate a person should have to wear. There's a certain type of speech that you should have. There's a certain way you should conduct yourself. And I had that beat into me over the years. And I struggled. The second I decided, and it took me, it had to be 16 years, 15, 16 years to finally decide, well, so I'm done with this shit. And I'm going to do it my fucking way. And that's when I did that. I made that decision. And it was really an interesting decision. I was out to dinner with a guy who owned I believe was the largest insurance firm in the state of Arizona and a very, very fast growing wealth management firm. And we're out to dinner with our wives. And after dinner, he's got his arm around me. He goes, buddy, I'm going to make you rich. I'm like, okay, wow. Thank you. And he's like, I'm going to make sure every realtor we do business with uses you for business. You're going to be part of us. This is but one thing. He goes, but there's one condition. I'm like, name it. He goes, you need to conform more. I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? He goes, you need to shave, get some suits, change how you do this and this and this. And I said, so what you're saying is I got to look like you. He goes, yes. You got to look like, the brand that we have. I said, Jack, I love you. I appreciate you. You're one of my closest friends, but fuck you. Or fuck that. One of those two, right? And he was kind of surprised. It's like, I can't compromise me for anything. But then it hit me really on that spot. It's like, I'm already compromising me. That's why he's offering this to me. He's throwing me a lifeline. But what I did is I pushed it away, said, I literally got to go way this direction. I'm walking down trying to tread this middle. He wants to take me here. I need to go there. I went there. And in a short window of time, did I be able to reach some of the successes that I was creating because I became the person that I wasn't lying to people with my appearance anymore. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I want to tell everybody. If you want to do this, you absolutely decide who you are and what you stand for in business and just go be that. It might be harder at the onset, but once it settles in and you've established those relationships, they never forget you. When I step on a stage and I look exactly like this when I go on a stage, I'm no different. I don't put on a suit. I step on a stage because people expect a real estate investment finance expert to come up on stage and address them, and they see me. What happens at that point is I get to capture something. In the human mind, if you don't ask questions, you don't get to hear the answer. I make them ask the question. The question is, what the hell is that doing up there? Because I anticipated this. Now they have to listen. Now, there is a risk in doing this. Because if you choose to do this, you better have some damn good data. Because if you don't, and you're just up there sounding like an asshole, then it can be exactly what they see up there, and they're going to give you zero value. But if you come up there with that question and you blow them away with what you're bringing to the table, you will forever submit yourself as somebody that they need to know and they want to do business with.
And how did you fund the business?
Deals.
Yeah. Just obviously bootstrap, you've obviously gone through quite a
100%. There's no getting money from anybody else. There's no borrowing. It was just deal after deal after deal and trying to take as little as I possibly could to live off of.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
That right there is probably the biggest question of life. But yeah, I'd probably do exactly what I did. I don't know that I'd do it any different. The industry, the options I had available to me and the way I went about it and the way that I was brought into it, I can't imagine a different way of getting going.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Well, one, you got market swings. Being in the industry from 1997 to now, there's some massive market swings, and you don't quite understand those. Coming from the mines and a rural high school where I was running cattle and things like that, the only market prices I knew of were cattle prices. Right. I kind of understood the commodity price, but not a whole hell of a lot. Land prices, those kind of things. But understanding how the market works. And what's interesting about the market is it's a very emotional place. People will put their money in mass quantity depending upon where they believe they're going to get a return. And when they get a return, it's so they can gloat and say, I got a return. That's what it really boils down to. And people operate out of fear most often. So if you understand the fears of humans, you understand exactly where you should be putting your time, your energy, and your money. But it took me a long time to figure that out. And a lot of time it came from my own physical and financial debilitation to start learning these lessons. So when it comes down to it, understanding those things I would say would be the best thing a person can do is understand what drives your business and then figure out what it is that drives humans to do that kind of business and continue to figure that out more and more and more. And of course, to develop the relationships.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
The relationship piece of it. Really, that is the greatest value of anything. And you're becoming the authentic human that you are. And I realize that sometimes people look at me and say, well, you're more of a character than a human. Yes, I am somewhat of a character as well in the process, but this is the unfiltered version of me and it always will be there. But relationships with everybody is everything. We're starting to go into a world of AI. Everything's going to change where it's becoming more and more automated. The more they can automate something, the cheaper they can make it. And in reality, we're not even getting it cheaper. The cost of things keep going up. Inflation is never going away. It's going to continue to erode the value of the dollars that we spend, whether it be in Australia, New Zealand, the U.S., China. Those dollars will continue to erode, or that currency will continue to erode. As a result of that, the profits will continue to increase. If people in business can find a way to make it more personal, then they will have a greater chance of being able to survive and grow. When you hear the words, nothing personal, just business, that is a dirtbag piece of shit that's trying to stick you in the ass without you looking. Business is personal. It always will be. If you understand that concept and continue to make it personal, you will have a great chance of winning.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I'm a people collector. I love people. I love getting new people. What I hate about growth is unfortunately the people aspect of it. The toughest part of it was become that type of person who has to let people go. So when you go on a hiring spree, the growth piece of it came because of the market doing what it did, but everybody was growing. It was just a boom in our industry. So everybody was trying to hire talent and they were spending enormous amounts of money to hire talent. Well, I would bring somebody aboard through let's just say through not a talent agency, but I'm talking about the recruiting agency.
Yep.
They're a recruiting agency. They would bring them aboard. Their resume looked great. We bring them in and start getting them going and training them up, and they just couldn't get it done. There was 5 people in a row I had to fire, and I hated it. In fact, I went too long and just tried to add more into them. See if is there just a trigger point we got to find to make them be confident in what they're doing. What it really turned out, I think I got lied to, and we ended up still paying the recruiting agency because we held on to them too long. Because I had belief in people. You've got to cut faster, and that's the toughest part for me is cutting people out because I want to believe that they really can do it. I finally got to a point for me to get right with this. Before I hired somebody, I have to sit them down before we actually hire them and say, listen, here's the thing. You said you can do these things. These are the things you told me you're capable of. You have a experience in yada, 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 and they will agree with me. I said, okay, I'm going to expect you could do these things. And here is the full breakdown of how it is. We've built on operational procedures. You say you can do these and you're going to do these, correct? Yes. I said, good. Because if you do not, you're going to turn me into the person that I freaking hate. And I don't want to be that person because that person who I become that I hate hates you. And I don't like hating people. And then I have to fire you. And for me to get to a point of fire you, I have to be so freaking frustrated and so inside out pissed at you that I will turn around and fire you. And I hate being that guy. Don't make me that guy. Can we agree to that? And I say, yes, okay, then we'll move forward. And then when that time comes, if they do that, I tell them, listen, I remember I told you about the guy you were I told you not to turn me into. Well, I'm starting to become that guy. So let's just agree to part right now before I get any more pissed. And this actually made my life a lot better when I have those conversations. I've actually had some people say, maybe I'm not what you're looking for because we were able to have a candid conversation.
Mm. And what do you love most about growing a small business?
Just the challenge of it, not knowing where the outcome is. When I look at my business back over the 20 some years I've been doing this, and it's like I look at it as like trying to climb an Everest-like mountain. You can't see the freaking trail most of the time. It's a lot of weather. You got clouds. You got all this stuff above you. It's impossible to see what you're getting into. And by the grace of God, was I unable to see the summit ever. And I don't think I've ever reached it. But when I do pause and some of the clouds do lift and I can look back over and I see the treacherous trail that I've been on, the cliffs and the rocks and the poisonous serpents and the ice fall and all these things that I've had to climb over. That to me was the best part of it is the journey. And the journey to me is never over. The journey will always keep going. There's no summit. There's no end. I will never, ever find a point where I get to stake my flag, sit back and relax. My feet will never go up. I will keep going because my joy is in the growth.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Starting to wrap my head around, and I'll probably tap into this a couple of times in this conversation, is about into the goal setting thought process and the thinking ahead and creating something mentally before you're able to create it physically. I always found that to be complete bullshit. I always thought, come on, write down your goals and your other bullshit. And, I'd have my bosses come in and say, how many deals are you going to close this month? How do I know? Right? I'd be like,
yeah,
I just come up with some bullshit arbitrary number that's easily achievable. And like you always say the same numbers. I say, yeah, because you always ask the same damn question. So ask a stupid question, you're going to get a stupid answer every single time. And then I had an opportunity of a very close friend of mine who bought a large real estate firm, connect me up with somebody. And he actually told me before he bought the firm, I'm going to change your life. And I didn't realize what he meant. But he did in the sense that he connected me up with this other lending firm to work for. And before they would bring me to meet the CEO and actually conclude an interview, they wanted me to write down what I was going to accomplish in 5 years. I'm like, how the hell do I know what I'm going to do in 5 years? So they sent me what he had written down about this thing. So I decided, fine, they wanted to see this shit, I'll give it to them. And I wrote this really elaborate story about me sitting on a rock next to a fire with a steak searing along this trail, and my Jeep's parked there. Me and my wife are talking, and I'm looking back on the last 5 years of my life and what I'd accomplished. And I wrote this just elaborate thing, and I sent that to them. They brought me in. They said, this is the most engaging we've ever seen anybody write. Well, I didn't take that job with them, but I kept track of what I wrote down. And I'd achieved every damn thing that I did, even though I had to restart in a year and a half after I wrote that, restarted zero again, I still achieved everything I intended to, which was so far beyond anything I expected I possibly could. So now I just start to know that there is no limit. The only limit we place on us is what we fail to visualize here.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Daily ritual. I think a person that for me, I wake up at 4:30 every single day. I get up, I go sit down in my chair, I do some reading, have prayer, do some exercise, get myself ready. I take the first 3 hours of my day for me. Nobody gets to call me. Nobody gets to text me. Nobody gets to interrupt that. That's for me and me alone. The rest of the world gets my day after that. But for me, I get the first 3 hours of it.
Do you need a guide on how to build your own money printing marketing machine? Do you feel like marketing is a mysterious art, only cracked by a chosen few? Fear not, we get it. Mastering marketing can be like taming a dragon. Download a copy of the Marketing Funding Flywheel ebook, which has 41 pages packed with over 50 tools and tips for your business. Let's get into it. Head to growasmallbusiness.com. We have plenty of resources waiting for you in the footer of our website. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
So one is just deciding to have the team and how to build the team. I read this book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt.
Great book.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great book, right? Talking about the theory of constraints.
Yep.
Well, that was one of the things that got me looking at the team concept to begin with. I'd also found myself walking into a Chipotle. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular restaurant, but walked in there, and those who have been in there, you'll realize you don't just walk in and order a burrito, right? You have to order the specific contents of the burrito before it's completed at the end. And I got to thinking as I'm counting heads standing in this line, I counted 11 people working at this Chipotle. I'm like, I find it interesting that there's only two people, me and one other person, working on intricate financial instruments like real estate investment transactions, but yet there's 11 people that are needed to be successful in burrito construction in this one little space. And this is a large company that has probably thousands of employees constructing burritos. Why is that the case? So I started building team members as I stood there that would do different stages of what I do to accomplish this. And then I read The Goal on how to stack people and how to look at your bottlenecks and where you should stack people in that assembly line that would be unconventional from what our industry says. And that's where I had started from there to start build this out. And then it was seeing who do I need to take off of, what tasks I need to take off of me and somebody else on the team that I can give to somebody else. And it was really just a matter of detailing down to the point now I have operational procedures, and I put specific people in specific places, ones that need to interact with the marketplace and ones that just do things in the background. No different than going to Chipotle. You have people standing on the front line asking you want a tortilla or a bowl, whether you want, chicken or barbacoa or beef or that kind of stuff. And then I have people in the background that you don't see that are cooking it all up and packaging things. So I'm following that particular pattern. And if you figure out how your method will work and what your plan is and where your bottlenecks are, it's easier to figure out who to put in place and who you need and who you don't need.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Communication, open, direct, honest communication with you and with the people around you. If you can't have a good, solid communication where people can share thoughts, ideas, and everything openly without emotion getting into it, you're going to have a tough time. I say that from experience because I am difficult. I have a difficult time with the emotion piece. I said that before. And so I will come at things from a very general aspect, not as direct as I should in many ways, but I have team members that do come at it direct. So it's a very, very fine line that we walk when it comes to emotion versus direct things. If you can figure out a way, and I think encourage everybody, if you're going to start your business, start figuring out how you will communicate with each other, establish that up front, give people and let people know as you're coming into this is how we are. And if you can't live in this environment, if you like that toxic emotional bullshit, then this is not the place for you. Get that ironed out right out of the gate.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I don't. There is no such thing as balance. I think balance is a bullshit pursuit, honestly. In fact, Darren Hardy says that life is completely imbalanced. Just walking is imbalanced. For you to be able to walk, you have to make yourself slightly off balance to catch yourself before you fall,
Yeah.
right? And that's walking forward and walking backwards and walking sideways and whatever else. I don't know that there is balance. Trying to achieve balance in my mind is chasing something that doesn't exist and putting yourself at a point of complete frustration. I think you need to love what you do. And I think you need to recreate with intention and do those things to the best of your ability. And when the big problem with being a driven entrepreneur is being able to shut it off and sit down and not feel lazy. Mark that time out. Schedule that time. Well, I'm going to sit on my ass right here. Whether it's Sunday, whether it be Saturday, I'm going to sit on my ass. I'm not going to think about anything. I'm not going to allow the worries of my business to come in. I'm not going to stress about those certain things. Plan that out so that way you can be intentional about it. If you operate with intention, that's the best shot at any sort of balance you'll ever have. I don't believe that balance exists personally. That's just me. You guys can say, hey, I have a balanced life. That's great if you feel that way. I don't feel like you can get it. And I could be fooling myself, but I've spent a lot of time in my business, in my career, lamenting the whole balance thing just to find out something. I don't believe there is such a thing.
And how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
A shit ton, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what I've found, two different things I've found have been probably the best for personal development is finding some sort of form of mentor, such as like a Darren Hardy has great philosophy and great things to handle out. That to me was the best thing. There is coaching companies. I have a hard time doing the country crap because it seems like they'll spend a lot of time just trying to hold you accountable to something rather than just being an actual asset. If I can't hold myself accountable, my ass up to work out, and I can't get my ass up to do my writing and my reading and my things like that, I don't know that anybody else can, because I can tell that guy to piss off. I'm not going to pay your bill next month and hang up on him, right? To me, this is one of the best things in the world to be able to get yourself in any sort of form of discipline is the Master Key System. It is a book that was written in 1910. It is probably the greatest work ever created next to Scripture. It's only this thick. It takes you 24 weeks to get through it because there's 24 lessons in it.
Might chuck that on my list to have a look at.
You definitely, after I've read a shit ton of business books, and let me just show you. Let me just kind of show you a little bit here. Look at how marked up this is.
Wow.
You see the markup, the flags, the
Mhm.
highlights. I have carried this thing. What day did I get this? I had this handed to me on March 20th of 2018. It has not left my possession since. I've traveled with it. It's been in multiple countries with me. I took it hunting in New Zealand. I took it hunting 3 times in Alaska. I've taken it to Vienna. This does not leave my hands. It's that important to me. More so than anything else. This never leaves my possession.
The next question is mentors and coaches. You've mentioned you've had a few. Anything else on those?
I think also with mentors and coaches is good, just good, solid business and friendship associations. I got 2 buddies of mine that we can bounce things off each other. We're in businesses together, and we're in separate businesses, and we lean on each other a lot. One of the greatest calls I ever got from one of these guys. He's got both me and my other business partner on the phone. There's 3 of us on the phone. He brought us both onto this conference call. He goes, "Guys, I got something to share with you, and it's something I can't share with anybody else." So we're wondering, okay, what's wrong? He said, "I just deposited $9 million into my account today." And we just blew up congratulating him and how damn awesome that was. Now, have I had a day like that? No, I have not. I've not had a year like that. I've made some amazing things, but not $9 million in one shot, right? But that just and he's crying on the phone. He goes, "I can't tell anybody else." Because then they'll just say, "Well, it must be nice." He goes, "You guys get what I had to go through to get there, because it's hell." He goes, and he thanked me profusely for being in a position where I could just accept that and congratulate him. I said, "Dude, are you kidding me? Just by association with you, I know someday my $9 million day is coming. And thank you for letting me be part of that day with you." That's a big damn deal when you have that kind of relationship with somebody. People think it's great to have a relationship when people come lean on you when their whole world has gone to shit, but it's even less. There's so fewer opportunities for a person to lean on another person they've had success and they feel comfortable saying it to somebody, because a lot of people want to cheapen it. And even if somebody says, "Well, that's great, you deserve it." No, it's not a matter of deserving. He earned that. To say you deserved it's cheapening what his experience he went through. It's cheapening what kind of effort he had to put forth. He earned every single cent of that, and he bled for every single cent of it. And by the grace of God did he get that.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Um, uh, Team members that I go to for a lot of things, and also it would be those two buddies would also be advisors and board of directors, if you will. We have a board of directors for the company itself, which do give some external advice from their respective industries that may be completely different, but they have at least a good mindset. And I just surround myself with a lot of great people. Jim Rohn used to say, "You're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with." I try and spend time with a lot of people in different events and different groups, and try and garner at least a lot of that great positive information from all of them.
All right, Aaron, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Getting your ass up and keep going when it seems as though everything is against you. That's the hardest thing in any business. And the one thing that you'll always remember every beating you took. You'll very, very rarely remember the wins. When I get a question to ask, what was the greatest thing that's ever happened? I have to really, really think back on it in business. But they can ask me, where's some of the biggest ass beatings? Those are right there, ready at the memory. We remember what we retain is the things that cause us the most pain. And do not ever let the pain stop you. Let that teach you where you do not step again. Those are landmine markers for you never to try and avoid stepping on that landmine again.
I think I know the answer to this, but favorite business book which has helped you the most?
First, the Master Key System. Now, another great book, since I'll just talk about a second one, is the Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil.
Right.
That accompanies this very well. Both of those works you absolutely need to put in your library. Let me tell you how to use this book, The Master Key System. It was a correspondence course in 1910. You would write in, you would get the course, they would send you one lesson. You'd read it every single day for a week and do the mental exercise every single day for a week till you master the mental exercise, then you go on to the next chapter or the next course. That's why it's a 24-week course or 25 weeks, something like that. But you've got to master the mental exercise first. This is teaching you how to focus your brain.
And while we're talking about books, maybe tell the audience a bit about your book, the title, and we'll link through to it in the show notes.
So the book, I'm still working on a title. It's a working title right now, and I'm not going to share that because I might change it and I might not. But it is literally about taking an ass beating. And I've got the forwards done. It's got there's a bunch of artwork. It literally went from, I don't know if you ever heard of Robert Allen. If that rings any bells.
Yep.
He wrote a book called No Money Down in the 80s. He wrote the forward. He oversaw a lot of what I was writing and gave me a lot of feedback I was writing. He's a very dear friend. And he told me as he read the final manuscript, because you need to illustrate this. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that? He said, well, call an artist. I'm like, do you know one? He goes, no. I'm like, well, you're a lot of freaking help. So I called my brother who's an artist. He goes, I don't do books. I said, just read the thing and tell me what you think. He decided to illustrate it, and he made 14 works of art for this book. And let's just tell you, by the time I'm done with this thing, I'll have a $100,000 business card by the time this book is done, because we're going all out with it. So I'd love to come back on the show later and promote it when we're ready. But I will, once I have that all built and I know what it is, you will know what it is.
Yeah. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I really, 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 other than the podcast we're on here right now, because the questions I ask is ridiculously good and detailed, more so than what I've been on most podcasts. It's very, very deep dive into a lot of things for most people to really scrape things generally. Also, I do really follow Darren Hardy probably more than anybody. His business philosophy, because he has had the opportunity to be the editor of Success Magazine and interview damn near every successful person on the planet, much like Napoleon Hill. And that was where we were able to gather a lot of data from him. Napoleon Hill also has online, I'll see if I can find it here real quick, and he has 2.5 hours of lessons online. You can find it on YouTube, where Napoleon Hill goes through all the process of understanding how to become successful. And it's all his success habits that Napoleon Hill put out there. And it was, let me see here, and I cannot find it. I thought I had it up on here, but I don't believe that I do. So I was listening to it. Yep, actually I do. In Napoleon Hill's Master, his complete series of 13 episodes, and it says Napoleon Hill's Master Key. It was all recorded in 1954, and every damn bit of it is true today. Listen to that, take notes, it'll change your life.
Yeah, he wrote Think and Grow Rich, a seminal book I think everyone should read.
Think and Grow Rich, to me, it was a great book, but Outwitting the Devil, to me, was a much more intense work.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
That particular thing would definitely be some sort of a CRM, right? You've got to have one way to maintain your contacts and know who it is you spoke to, keep contact with them, keep data on those people, anything you can to keep the connection close and remember things about them. Every little note you can take on them is going to help you. Because again, business is personal and you have to get personal and keep track of it.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Listen to all the people that told you what it takes to become successful. Don't think you know anything about it. What's funny is I remember back a teacher wrote in a yearbook of mine in seventh grade. She was my English teacher, and she said she wrote down whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. That was a Napoleon Hill quote, and I didn't realize that until later on in life. I remembered she said that. I haven't seen that yearbook in 30, 40 years. I have no idea where it is, but I remember her writing it down. That stands out. If you can think it, you can do it. And what a person needs to do is go and seek out all these things that these people wrote. There's a lot of amazing works out there. The books we just talked about, right? Then there's the greatest salesman whoever lived. I think it's the greatest salesman who ever lived, and the richest man who ever lived. Those two books as well. Read the damn books. There's a reason why that's there. There's a reason why certain dictators burned books. They don't want you to have that knowledge because knowledge is very, very powerful. When you can apply the knowledge, it becomes even more powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Aaron. I really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations on the journey. A lot of ups and downs, but you've obviously done quite well, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to you and the audience out there.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.